Start with converting from moles to atoms, molecules, ions, etc. So a lot of times you'll be asked a question, maybe something along the lines of, you have 10 moles of oxygen gas, right? And then how many molecules of oxygen do you have? So how many molecules, right? So what we need to understand is that in order to go between moles and atoms, molecules, ions, whatever, any of these things, is we have to understand what mole actually means. You can kind of think of moles like a dozen, so mole and dozen, right? So 1 mole is equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, whatever, I guess, donuts, if we're talking about it in terms of donuts. And then dozen is 12 donuts, right? So if I said, hey, someone bought 3 dozen donuts, that means there's 3 times 12, which is 36 donuts. If I said someone bought 3 mole donuts, it just means they bought 3 times 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd donuts, right? So this is just like dozen. It's a similar word. You can kind of look at it like that. So in the context of molecules and stuff like that, we can use moles to represent a large number of atoms and molecules and ions. So when we talk about, oh, you have 1 mole of oxygen, you don't only have 1 molecule of oxygen, you actually have 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. So in order to move between the two, you need to use 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, which is Avogadro's number. So let's look at it. So again, like I said, if I tell you someone bought 3 dozen donuts, how many donuts do they have? Well, you have 3 dozen, and then for every 1 dozen, you have 12 donuts, equals 36. Just like that, if we were to use this example right here, we have 10 moles, and then we know for every 1 mole we have 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms, or in this case it's actually molecules because it's O2, not just one thing. But even if it says ions, I mean, it's the same concept, or if it's molecules or atoms, right? It's a dozen. If it's a dozen donuts, a dozen apples, a dozen oranges, it's the same thing. Just like that, 1 mole of atoms, 1 mole of molecules, 1 mole of ions, it's all the same thing. There's no difference. So I really hope that that kind of cleared up how to go from moles to atoms, ions, or molecules. Now, if you have it the other way around, like suppose they say you have, I don't know, 12.04 times 10 to the 23rd atoms, well, to go from atoms to moles, you would just kind of divide it by 6.02, and you can kind of try working that out with other numbers and examples that you might come across, and see how much it makes sense if you just compare it to the way dozen works.